Hi, gee whiz, hold on. I got to turn on some lights so I can see myself and see the book and get everything done. There we go. Okay, so welcome to Storytime with Dad Booker. Today we're going to continue on with Soleman. We're getting towards the end of the book, and I'm getting close to the end of writing the next book of Sheriff in a Small Town. But I don't think I'm going to be ready. So we'll be doing Murder Mystery in My Pocket. Okay, this chapter is Hal Macintosh Remembers. So, man, this is Hal Macintosh. He's the gentleman I want you to talk to. Harry sat opposite the man and subjected him to a swift examination. It was a man who was in serious emotional pain. In his hand was a picture of a woman he knew without doubt that he knew. He had kept the picture in a desk drawer, even though he had no recollection of who she was. He did know that somehow, somewhere, he had seen the living woman this picture represented. He also knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that he had somehow been the cause of her departure. From his pocket, he pulled a small notebook and handed it to Soleman. Podolsky looked over his shoulder as he read. Some portion of the original man had been retained, a ghost image that they couldn't program over or erase. In each transition, Victor had forced the man to do some criminal act, then he was reprogrammed. The previous man was overlaid with a new persona, and this man had been through it 3 times. In each rendition, he had kept notes, though the notes were fragmented. There were notes of the changes that were happening to him over which he had no control. Changes that caused him to turn from a loving, caring husband into an ogre, evil and aggressive, filled with nothing but covetous heart. Wealth was his ideal and his only goal. He was instructed, no, forced to find a beautiful woman to become his wife. With his good looks and manners, it had been a simple matter. He almost wished it had been harder. The writing changed with each inception, but the fragmented thoughts were always similar: regret, anger, money, love, hate, anguish. The words were written over and over, some in capitals, sometimes in writing so shaky as to be unreadable. Mr. Soleman, I don't know who I was originally. My mind has been changed repeatedly to the point I don't know anything. Detective Podolsky informed me that my original name was Hal Macintosh. Well, if he says it is, so then I guess I'm Hal Macintosh. I wouldn't know now that I wasn't. I've read my notes that I've written for previous changes, and they frighten me. I almost feel the way Dr. Jekyll might have felt. He held up the picture. Supposedly, I've been married 3 times, but this is the only one I have a picture of. I can only assume this is to have been my first wife. The man lapsed into grieving silence as he brushed the cheek of the woman in the picture. Harry wasn't sure about rebuilding the man's mind. Could this man stand the strain of knowing what he had done? Harry asked to borrow the picture. He had Podolsky get a copy for him. I think I might just be able to locate her. The man's face paled. She wouldn't want to see me like this. I'm an abomination. His hands flew to his face and tears dripped through his fingers. When Podolsky returned with the picture, Soleman confirmed the man's address. Detective, if the man is not the man he was due to programming and reprogramming, can you really charge him for a crime he doesn't know he committed? Detective Podolsky looked at the man in frustration. This was his only possible source for solving what was going on, and now he'd have to release him. He looked pleadingly at Soleman. Soleman stood and patted him on the shoulder. Meet me at the shoebox after you take him home. Soleman was waiting at the shoebox, and when Podolsky arrived, he was ushered into the Treadnought. Podolsky had never dreamed of a vehicle this intriguing. Its weight showed it was basically a tank, but the car drove easily and sped up quickly. There were an array of armaments activated by switches on the center console. The car was colored so that it almost looked like a penny loafer with a small copper penny shown in relief on the hood. Soleman was explaining a few of the weapons at his command when Podolsky interrupted. Soleman, the car is incredible, but could you please tell me where we're going? You said you might know where this woman is. We don't know anything about her, so how can you know where to find her? Soleman slowed the car down and, getting out, locked it. Well, it's come to my attention that all, or at least some of the women who have been maimed by the members of the Victorian Club find their way to one location. We're going to it now. They walk for 4 blocks to the Nightingale mission. During the whole trip, anyone watching would have only seen Podolsky, Soleman blended into the darkness, skipping from patch to patch with practiced skill. For him, the actions were automatic, and he didn't even think about it anymore. Arriving at the mission, he had Podolsky wait outside while he went in and explained his mission. Seated in the office of Madame Nightingale, he passed over the picture. Madame Nightingale, my name is Soleman, and I'm here to see if I can help one of the women in your establishment. I have Detective Podolsky waiting outside. I'd like to bring him in so he can explain about a man who he believes is to be this woman's husband. Madame Nightingale's eyes burned red in anguish. And why would she care about a man who subjected her to such infamy? Why should I help you to harm her further? Madame Nightingale, I believe you know that retribution has already been dealt to this man in the exact manner in which he harmed her. She smiled, and her smile showed in her eyes. I'm pleased to hear it, but I still don't see why you think that she would want to see him. Madam, may I bring in Detective Podolsky to confirm what I'm about to relay? She nodded, and Soleman went to bring him in. Detective Podolsky had the presence of mind to wait to be invited to sit. She saw his deference and waved a hand towards a chair. Soleman began his tale of the man who couldn't remember the woman or what he had done, who had no idea why he had been subjected to torture and theft. He had no recollection of the harm he had done to anyone, and Nightingale was incredulous that any man could accomplish what he had done and not remember it. It should be burned into their memory. All the time Soleman had spoken, she had watched Podolsky. Podolsky took out the diary and passed it to her. Though fragmented, she could read between the lines at the tortured soul of the man who had been this woman's husband. Very asked if Podolsky could wait somewhere, as he informed her to divulge to Madame Nightingale. He had information to divulge to Madame Nightingale alone. Podolsky was led to a small room that was used for meditation. When she returned, Soleman spoke of his experiences at the Victorian Club. On finding that this club represented a link between all the men your agent had caused to have retribution on, I said that the only way to gain information was to pretend to become a member. The first few visits were ordinary. The dance was authentically Victorian, and I began to believe that this was just an ordinary club for the like-minded individuals. Recently, I received an invitation, phrased as a summons, to attend a special meeting. I brought my partner and 2 females we are associated with who were passing as our wives. We were put through an indoctrination which included part hypnosis and part brainwashing, one to enhance the other. I was unaffected, as was one of the females I brought. We had prepared ourselves for the onslaught. The other 2 succumbed, and they have been our guides as we might understand what goes on. The way I see it, the men are gradually induced to become more authoritarian, to the point that the wise become reclusive. When this happens, it is time for corporal punishment. It is then that these malicious instances occur. Once this happens, part of the indoctrination is that the man would become terrified of what they have done. They instinctively seek medical attention for the women, they provide for their upkeep to a certain extent, then return to the Victorian Club for assistance. Madame Nocturne had continually changed color from deepest red to pale as the tale unfolded. Once they returned to the Victorian Club, they were given a criminal task to accomplish, for they were re-indoctrinated, their memories sponged, a new identity created, and then were forced to find a new spouse. It is my belief that the second and more wives were never regularized because the original marriage was never dissolved. Whoever ordained the marriages performed a share marriage, and the couple went away believing they were joined in holy wedlock. Once more, the whole same progression of events with the same outcome. Then the whole thing would start all over again. What we lack is the proof required to bring down Victor and Marjorie. We can hardly hold the men responsible if they don't remember what they have done. Madame Nocturne left and brought in the woman of the picture. Before seating herself, she brought out Detective Podolsky. Melissa, this gentleman is called Soleman, and this is Detective Podolsky. Soleman bowed over her extended hand, and Detective Podolsky shook it. Mrs. Macintosh stood shaking with anxiety. Madame Nocturne says it's my husband has no recollection of what he's done, that he has been under the control of the people at the club, and that I never really was divorced from him, she said heavily and shocked. And I am still tied to him. Will I never be free of his tyranny? Soleman sat opposite her, his eyes penetrating into her soul. He saw that she still loved her husband, but whether that was part of the programming or reality, he couldn't be sure. May I call you Melissa? She nodded. Melissa, the man you once knew is still there, struggling to break the control he is under. He has kept this picture of you and understands he did something that caused you to leave. He's in anguish that he could have harmed you and doesn't understand why. The control that Victor uses has also been used on you. You were the tool that they used to create a situation where Hal would perform criminal acts at their command. I have the means to bring him out from under their control. However, I am in fear that when the full realization of what he has done comes to the fore, he may either lose his mind completely or commit suicide. Do you care for him at all still? Will you help us to save him so that he and you can return to the love you had? Melissa rose and paced the room. Knowing that her husband had not purposefully done what he had done to her changed things. The man who did these things was not in essence her husband. He was hidden deep inside. The fact that he kept their picture through it all meant that deep love they had was still there. She passed a silver vase. It was the only reflective surface in the mission, as Madame Nocturne had no mirrors. Melissa saw her face. Will he want me now looking the way I do? Soleman took her hand. True love sees more than what is on the surface. Besides, he also looks as you do now, remember? He handed her a card. This is a doctor who can make a partial mask to cover what has happened. He will also assist in lessening the pain and softening the skin. Is that acceptable to you? She placed the card in her pocket and turned to Madame Nocturne. Madame Nocturne, I believe this man can help us, to rebuild the life we had. Thank you for all you have done for me and for those of us who have come here. If this worked for us, then I will return and see if we can help others. One thing I ask is that you stop sending out the ones who retaliate on our behalf. As this Soleman has said, if they were being controlled, then it is these people who we should make pay, not the innocents. She turned to Soleman and Podolsky. I'm ready to go wherever you want to take me. In the dreadnought, she spent the trip with eyes closed in preparation for meeting her husband once more. When they arrived at Mr. Macintosh's mansion, he parked and went to the door alone. He explained the reason for his visit. Melissa got out and walked slowly towards the door. Hal stopped speaking and watched her approach. As she walked in darkness, he seemed to be trying to place her in his mind. Slowly, she emerged into the light. It was when her face appeared that a gasp escaped his lips. He rushed to her, his face a mask of agony. He didn't know her as his wife. His mind was still too controlled for that, but his heart stirred at the sight of her and felt pain as he looked at the destruction to her face that he supposed he had caused. He begged her for forgiveness. She held his face in her hands and shook her head. No, I cannot forgive you because you are not the Hal I knew. I will forgive. These men can help you back to bring the man I married and am still married to. Will you let them help us? Her use of the word us was the clincher. He turned to Soleman. Do whatever you have to bring me back to who I was. With a firm step, he led the way to the living room. Gently, he seated Melissa, then took a chair for himself. He stood in patience, waiting for whatever they would do. Perry brought a tape recorder from the treadnought and inserted the tape. He placed headphones over Hal's ears and pushed play. When the tape was playing, he called Persephone, explaining that he'd gone to check on some stocks and would be home as soon as he could. Persephone expressed disappointment, which met with fake disapproval on his part. They had worked out a script in case he was called out as Soleman and would be delayed. Bears were listening on an extension. They would hear the regular pattern was working. Soleman hung up the phone and recommenced the deprogramming. As memories flooded into Hal's mind, he turned pale and his eyes started as he looked towards Melissa, pleading for her forgiveness. His arms had to be tied to the arms of the chair when he tried to rip off the headphones from his head. Soleman was tempted to halt the procedure, but Podolsky held him fast. They had to get at the truth, and this was the only way. The realization that this might also be Oedipus's fate if they weren't constantly on guard made him tremble. After 3 hours, Hal calmed down. He was tired from strain and constant repetition as his mind was brought back to where it had once been. Podolsky pulled Soleman to a quiet corner. Do you think he'll have any recollection of his other wives? Perry shook his head. I don't think so. He's been programmed so many times that the deprogramming is going to bring him back to his first self. The ones after will be wiped away. I already promised you that I will bring you the evidence you need to capture and convict Victor and his wife. We stopped the carnage that had begun as retribution. That nocturne will send no more people to their doors. I'll have to work on deprogramming the rest of the men and their wives, but I'm afraid some of these women will be left behind alone. The realization that they were in a false marriage may be difficult for them to grasp. I'm not sure what can be done for them, but I'll get some people working on it. The scars on the surface, that we can do something for. We can't heal them completely. That's too much for the state of medicine we have today, but we can mask as much as possible to give them as normal life as we can. It is the inner scars that will take the longest to heal, and they even do. He looked at Melissa and asked her if she wanted to go through the deprogramming after seeing its effect on Hal. Will I remember what has happened to me since I left? Soleman hesitated. He wasn't sure, but since he hadn't been indoctrinated, he hadn't been affected by the deprogramming. It had been a precaution, nothing more. Well, I can't say for sure, and we won't know if the deprogramming affects you the same as it does Hal, but I doubt you would remember much after your departure. This program brings you back to a stable point in time before the Victorian Club, or at least close to it. However, I can create a new program that adjusts so that your memories are complete and that it only removes the programming information that deals with your control aspects. Your mind would otherwise be unaffected. She gave that careful consideration. She had gained strength to being part of the mission, strength in ministering to others worse off than herself. It might even be possible that the control aspect she had been programmed with had already been broken. I'll wait for the new deprogramming, but I think I'm already free of their influence. In fact, I'm sure of it. Let us focus on my husband. He and I were already very much in love before. He will need a great deal of assistance to overcome what has been done. Even realizing he had no control will be no help. His guilt will be strong. Soleman smiled warmly on this courageous woman. She was free of the deprogramming. He made a note to recreate the deprogram program to leave the memories intact. Podolsky, I have work to do. Can you stay and assist in recovery? He's going to require support. He will need food to sustain his strength and rest. The mental scars will take a long time to heal, but he can seek therapy for that. Melissa rose and checked the tape. She went to Podolsky and Soleman, shook their hands, and led them to the door. He is my responsibility now. I will do all that he requires. Madame Nocturne has taught me well. The door closed and she walked confidently back to her husband. All right, the next one is change of operations, and we're getting very close to the end. So probably about next week, Friday, will be the last chapter, which is kind of a shame. I'm getting fond of this one. There is going to be another Soleman book. I'm working on that. The notes for that one. His new villain is going to be Baker, so it's going to be a little more fun to do because I can camp it up a little bit. So I'm getting ready to get going on that as soon as I finished Sheriff in the Small Town 4. I'm keeping busy, and I'll keep these books coming as long as I can. So look forward to seeing you again. Be good and be good to yourself. See you on Tuesday. Bye.